Here we go. Let's try this again. I actually recorded this entire episode yesterday off the cuff, just talking to you guys, having a conversation about helpful tips for going back to school. And when I got done, I realized that my microphone was not on. And so I did not have any audio saved from the entire podcast that I recorded. And then I don't know if you saw my Instagram or not, but right when I got done, I was like, well, that is a super bummer, but too bad, so sad. I'm just going to have to start over. And I went and touched the trackpad on my Mac to start over, and my entire computer crashed. And so I was on the phone with Apple support. I was freaking out. I thought I was going to have to send my Mac in just to have them look at it because we don't have an Apple store was going to cost over $700. And that wasn't even for any of the diagnostics. That was literally just for them to look at it, just to receive the Mac. And I was kind of panicking a little bit. However, I was like just not accepting that answer. I was not accepting that my computer would crash on me. And so I was really just kind of like picking it up, looking at it, and I could hear the faintest, tiniest buzzing sound. And so I really started looking around, and you will never believe what was causing my Mac to not turn back on. You know what it was? It was a gum wrapper. Somehow a little tiny gum wrapper got into the crack of my Mac and caused the whole thing to shut down and not turn back on. So, long story short, I guess I'm super, super thankful that I did not mail my computer somewhere for them to open it up and realize that there was a gum wrapper inside. But anyway, let's move on. Today, I just have to give you a quick reminder. I am so excited for Wednesday. On Wednesday, we are kicking off our first-year teacher support mentorship program. It is our big kickoff party for all of our new members, but also our current members to come together, to get to know each other just a little bit more, to really set the tone for the school year, to build the relationships, to build our community, and to really just kick things off in the best way we possibly can. But in addition to that, I am also starting a brand new coaching program with all of our blossoming teacher members. And I cannot even contain my excitement for how excited I am for this coaching program. As teachers, we know that we need to meet our students exactly where they are. We know that all of our students are going to be at different places in their educational journey. And so we have to do everything we possibly can to ensure that we are helping them wherever they are. And that's also what this coaching program is all about. So when I was coming up with this coaching program, I really had a lot to take into consideration. I had to think about how I have first-year teachers who have had the best student teaching experience ever. They're totally prepared for their first year of teaching and they're just looking for a little bit more support. But I also had to take into consideration the fact that I have teachers who came from an alternative route, teachers who do not have any prior experience, and in addition to that, I also have teachers who they've been teaching for 3, 4, or 5 years, and they're just noticing that things aren't going well as they were hoping they would. They're just looking for a good refresh. They're looking for a fresh start. And so when I was thinking about what I want out of this year for all of the teachers that are in our group, it really came down to one thing. And that one thing is that I need to meet these teachers exactly where they are. So this coaching program is going to go through an entire reflection process, helping you go from your current state where you are right now as an educator and helping you kind of make some of those realizations and really pinpoint where you're struggling and what you can do to grow in some of those areas, but also so that you can realize what your strengths are as an educator and you can play off of those strengths and use those strengths to be the best educator you can possibly be. So this coaching program kicks off on September 15th. We are accepting members through September 14th. This coaching program is going to last throughout the school year. We get together every single month. Part of the time, we are working through a current pain point that teachers are going through, something that relates to exactly where we are in the school year. And then the other half of the call is always just really focusing on that community, the relationship, helping teachers all come together with teachers who are going through the exact season of life they are. Something that I absolutely love now these days with technology is that we get to bring these teachers together from all around the country, and we get to help them have the conversations that they would not have the opportunity to have if programs like this didn't exist. So something that our current members have really been loving is that on Zoom, we have the opportunity to use breakout rooms. So we can send teachers off into breakout rooms. They can go into rooms based on the content area that they teach. They can go into breakout rooms based off of the grade level they're teaching. And inside these rooms, it is just a safe space for them to ask questions, to have conversations, to get advice, to brainstorm different lesson activities, and it's seriously just the best time ever. So that's enough about that. I cannot wait. If you are joining us, I will see you on September 15th at 6 p.m. Central Time. And with that, let's get into today's episode.
Welcome to the North Dakota Teaching Podcast. Whether you're a first-year teacher, veteran teacher, or just a mom trying to gain some new insights, you are right where you are meant to be. Kayla Durkin, founder of the Blossoming Teacher course, is passionate about helping new teachers blossom into the teacher they were born to be. Kayla wants to help inspire teachers to be their best self, whether that means sharing about personal or professional development, self-care, or the latest and most effective teaching strategies. Through this podcast, you will hear from real teachers sharing their stories about teaching, all with one main goal in mind: to be able to make an impact and help other teachers blossom. And with that, here is your host, Kayla Durkin.
Hey, friends. I hope you had a fantastic week. I think it's pretty safe to say that everyone is back at school, at least in the United States. We just celebrated Labor Day on Monday, and I really hope that each of you were able to find a little bit of time to rest and relax. I'm pretty sure most schools did not have school on Labor Day, but of course I could be wrong. So if you did have school on Monday, either way, I hope you had the best week ever. So I do have to be honest, I wasn't even going to record this episode. I have a different episode that was supposed to air this week, and instead I decided to push that off to next week because I have been noticing a lot of the same things inside of our first year teacher support Facebook group. And if you're a first-time listener, so this group is on Facebook. It's called the First Year Teacher Support Group. And within that group, we have teachers that have all different kinds of experience. They all come with different tools in their toolbox. And it's seriously just so great to see all the collaboration that happens within that group. However, because it's back to school season, I have been seeing so many different posts that really just reaffirmed that this episode is important and it does matter. So if you have been in school for a few weeks now, or you've only been in school for a couple days, either way, you are in the exact place that you should be. And I hope that this episode just gives you a little bit of encouragement and lets you know that you are absolutely not alone. So within our Facebook group, I've been seeing posts like, nobody told me it was going to be this hard. Nobody prepared me for this. And I've seen those same type of posts year after year after year. Actually, honestly, that's why I created the Blossoming Teacher course, was because I knew there was a huge need for teachers to be supported and encouraged, and so I wanted to provide that safe space for them. Well, fast forward, we have teachers inside this group who are not part of the Blossoming Teacher course, but they're in this Facebook group and they are just sharing their hearts with all of the other teachers who are in there. And there's a lot of frustration. There are a lot of people who just feel like they're not going to make it. They feel like they were not adequately prepared. They feel like they just don't have what it takes to even finish out this school year. I don't know, honestly, how many posts I've seen of teachers saying, it's only day 2 and I already think I need to quit, or it's only my first week in and I'm ready to break my contract. All of these posts honestly break my heart, and it just shows that there are so many different teachers all around the country feeling the exact same way. So I really do just hope this episode today provides you a little bit of encouragement and lets you know that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling, but there are things that you can do to just take some action and work through some of these struggles that you're having. I'm pretty sure you already know the first thing we're going to talk about today, but if you're thinking about how things are going right now, how maybe there's been a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of frustration and it's just not going the way you expected it to go, the very first thing I want you to do is think about the climate and the culture of your classroom right now. Are you giving your students the opportunity to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel welcomed, to feel loved, to know that inside your classroom, they are a family? And if not, if you haven't provided those opportunities yet, I want you to know, just like your students get a fresh start every single day, you also get a fresh start every single day. If you maybe didn't start your class off on the right foot, it is not too late. We are still so early in the school year that it's okay to pick up where we are and to say, you know what, I'm going to scratch that and start all over. Maybe it's maybe you're listening to this right now on a Friday and you're going to take Monday to have your fresh opportunity. Or maybe you're listening to this on Monday and you're going to start fresh on Tuesday. Whatever it is, just know you get that fresh start. You are worthy of another chance. You are worthy of this second opportunity to try again with your students. And most times, honestly, students are so forgiving. Even when you teach 11th, 12th graders, it's a little bit harder to gain their trust and to gain their respect back. But for the most part, they're always willing to give you a second chance too. No matter what grade you teach, it's going to look a little bit different, but at the same time, it's all the same thing. We need to take time really getting to know our students on a deeper level. We need to show them that we truly do care for them, that we are there for them. We're there to support them. We're there to encourage them. We are there to help them however we can. And when we do that, our students will start to trust us just a little bit more. And the more trust that we have, the more respect that we have for each other, it's going to make every single thing about the school year just that much easier. So because we have listeners on here today that teach all different grades, all different ages, I'm going to give you 2 just easy examples of how you can do this. I'll start by sharing about my 6th grade experience because that is right in the middle. So this past year, I taught 6th graders. I had over 30 6th graders in some of my classes. My class periods were only 43 minutes long. So honestly, there was not a ton of time to talk to every single student every single day. However, I knew it was my job as an educator to make that a priority. If I wanted my students to feel welcomed and seen and heard inside my classroom, I needed to make time for it. So I started off by beginning with the end in mind. I had to view my entire class period as a whole and think about how am I going to break this up so I can make the most of my time. With only 43 minutes and 30 kids in a class, there is not a ton of time, but I made it work. So I ended up structuring my class. Right now, I'm giving you an example of my 6th grade math class. I structured my class in a sense that I had my daily math talk projected on the board for the students right when they entered the room. I had 2 minutes between every single class period, and I was teaching math, reading, and social studies. And unfortunately, my math classes were not all back to back, so I had to start fresh every single time. But right before the previous class would end, I would always get my next class that I was teaching. I would get that presentation projected and ready to go. That way, when the bell rang and as students were leaving and the next group of students were coming, I could wait by the door. I could say bye to the ones who were heading out. I could greet the ones who were coming in. And those students who were coming into my math class, since I had my daily math talk projected right there for them on the board, they could enter the room. They knew exactly what their expectation was. And of course, it took a little bit of time to build that expectation to get into the routine. And we're going to talk about that as actually our next tip here. But my students would come in. They knew their expectation was to sit down, to grab out their whiteboards, and to get started on the daily math talk of the day. So as they were working on that after the bell rang, that was my opportunity to walk around the room, kind of do quick check-ins with my students, see who was there, see who wasn't, enter my attendance quickly. And then by that time, we were 3 to 4 minutes in. They were typically finished up with their problem now. And I would either right before we shared our answers or right after we shared our answers, really take time to give each of my students an opportunity to share something. So what I did was I gave my students 10 to 15 seconds. It did depend how big the class was. My classes that had 30 plus kids, I had to give them a little bit more time. I was fortunate enough. I had some classes that were only like 15, 16 kids. So there I could give them just a tiny bit more time than the other classes. But with 10 to 15 seconds, I know you're thinking, okay, to hear from every single kid, that sounds like a lot of time. But if you have 30 kids in a class and you give every single kid 10 seconds to share something, that takes up about 5 minutes of class every single day. If you have 30 kids and you're giving them each 15 seconds to share something every single day, that's going to take up about 7 minutes of class time. So now when we think about my 43-minute class, if I'm spending 7 minutes of the day giving each of the students an opportunity to talk, that is a sixth of the class period. But for me, that was the most beneficial time I could have with those students. When I gave them each 10 to 15 seconds to share, which some students might only take 5 seconds, honestly, And that means some of the other students could share a little bit more if they were a little bit more chatty. But anyway, those 10 to 15 seconds, I would let students share whatever they wanted to share. They could tell me what they did last night. They could tell me something that was going really well. They could tell me something they were excited for. It really doesn't matter. So some students would tell me about a movie they watched the night before. Some students would tell me they were going to the mall. Some students would tell me that they were having a sleepover. Whatever it was, students could share whatever they wanted to say. And I think the best part about this, in my opinion, is that once they got that opportunity to share, they were ready to get to work because they had a chance to say something and to honestly just get a little bit of positive interaction before we really even dove into the work. Then I would present my mini lesson and I would either get into small groups or start working one-on-one with students. But before I would get into those small groups, as I'm walking to my small group table, whatever, I could stop and check in with a couple of students, or if I wasn't doing small groups that day, I could do some circulating around the room and I could stop in and check in and say, hey, I remember you said you were going to the mall yesterday. Did you end up buying anything? Or, hey, I remember you told me you and your mom were going to be baking cookies. What kind of cookies did you end up making? Whatever it was, but those students, the fact that I remembered something they did the day before or after the weekend or whatever it was, the fact that I was taking time out of my day to stop and check in and see how that thing went with them, their friends, their family, whatever it was, it meant so much to them. And because I took that opportunity to check in with them, the level of respect in the community in our classroom, it was that much stronger. Another thing that I always did with my sixth graders, and this went for math, reading, social studies, whatever it was, but I did daily lunch bunch groups, and any student who wanted to come could come. I would just write on the board, I would say, hey, I'm having lunch bunch today. Who wants to come join me? And I think the thing my students loved about that most is that it wasn't a punishment. They didn't have to come because they had to get work done. They could come because they wanted to come, because they wanted to have the opportunity to have lunch in the classroom with their teacher and with their friends. And this might sound crazy, but I even let them bring friends that weren't in class because I wanted to see how they interacted and who they were friends with when they aren't inside my classroom. So we had lunch bunch maybe twice a week, sometimes 3 days a week. It wasn't every single day because I'm human and I need a break too. But whenever I would write that we were having lunch bunch on the board and I would invite my students to come, it would just give them an opportunity to kind of make the decision for themselves. Do I want to come? No, today's not a good day. And if they don't want to come, they don't have to come. And obviously, not everyone can come because I had over 100 students. So, I would maybe sometimes have 10, 15 students show up at most, but there were some students who would come just because they wanted to hang out. But there were also students who would come because they wanted to get work done. And it wasn't always even work for my class. It was work for other teachers that they maybe had in the afternoon that they didn't get time to finish, whatever it was. It was just a safe space that they could come, they could hang out, they could get some work done, they could chat with their friends, whatever it was, and then go on with their day. No expectations whatsoever. Sometimes I had music on the board, sometimes I had Disney Plus on the board, whatever it was. It was just a space they could come and just be themselves. And I think that really helped with the climate and culture in my classroom as well, because they just knew that in this classroom, we truly are a family. It is just a place where they can be themselves. So when I was teaching fourth grade, I have to admit, I had a rocky start to the school year. I love everything about my first year of teaching. It was such a great experience. I loved my students. I had a great class. However, at the same time, my class was pretty chatty and I had no idea what I was doing. Honestly, I did not know how to welcome students into my room. Not the right way, but the way that worked for us. I really had no idea how to get the routines and procedures started. And so I actually had to work with my principal a little bit, ask some other teachers, get some advice, because I didn't know how to find a system that would work for us. But here's what I ended up doing. So right away, when my fourth graders were coming, they had quite a few things that they had to get accomplished. They had to drop off all of their stuff. If it was winter, we're talking snow boots, hats, gloves, snow pants, like all of this stuff. They had to first drop off. They needed to get any paperwork that they had out of their backpack. They needed to get their snack, their water bottle, all of that stuff out of their backpack. And when they got into the room, sometimes they had paperwork they needed to turn in. They needed to make their lunch choice. They needed to make their milk choice. They needed to get their snack put away inside their desk. And all of that stuff maybe doesn't seem like too much, but trying to get fourth graders into a good routine did take some time because it was pretty chaotic. However, we had to have a lot of conversations, and this comes down to those relationships as well. I realized that if I start off our morning with a morning meeting every single day, were so much more productive. So after we got that routine and procedure down of how students entered the room, right when the bell rang, the second the bell rang, students would stand up by their desk, they would push in their chair, we would say the Pledge of Allegiance, and the second we got done with the Pledge of Allegiance, they would automatically walk their bodies over to our circle so that we could start our morning meeting. It took some time. I promise you, it took some time to get into a routine where they were able to get all of that done in the 5 minutes that they had. So for our school, I have to remind myself, but I think that year the first bell rang at 8:10 and then the school day started at 8:15. So at 8:10, when that first bell rang, they're coming in from the playground, they're coming in from the breakfast room, they're coming from all these places all around the school, and they were dropping off their stuff, they were getting in the room, and then right at 8:15, everyone was expected to have all of those things done. They would stand up by their desk, push in their chair if they were sitting in their desk, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we would walk over to the carpet. Now, at the beginning of the year, I really tried to have my students start by doing some morning work on their desk right away. And for me, it just wasn't a good way to start the day. I realized because it wasn't giving my students an opportunity to talk and share. And that's what they really want right when they're coming into the room. They want to talk, they want to chat, they want to tell me all the different things that they have to share because as fourth graders, they just have so much to share. So we started doing those morning meetings every single day, and that really did help the community within our classroom. And then in addition to that, when sometimes their days were a little bit long or chaotic or whatever it was, we would also do afternoon class meetings. And then we always did an afternoon class meeting on the weekends before we sent them home, just as, a little reminder, touch base of things that were going on next week, but also to let them know that we really do care about them. We want them to have a safe and happy weekend, and we can't wait to see them again when they come back on Monday. So if you're teaching elementary and things just aren't going the way that you hope they would go, I just want to remind you it's never too late to start over and to try reworking those routines and procedures because it's hard. I just told you my first year of teaching, there were so many challenges for me, and I had a lot that I had to overcome. I had a lot that I had to learn, but I sought out advice. I asked other teachers and I tried new things. I would give it some time. I would never give up right away. I'd give it some time before I switched gears, but that kind of leads us into the next tip. And the next tip is consistency. So if I wouldn't have been consistent in how I was expecting my students to come into the classroom, I expected them to come in, to hang up all of their stuff, to make their lunch and their milk choice, to get all of those papers turned in, to put their snack in their desk, to put their water bottle in the crate. I had all of those expectations for my fourth graders. And right away, it was crazy and it was chaotic, especially, I can't even say right away because I didn't know that's what I wanted them to do right away. It took some time for me to realize that. But once I figured out that's what I needed from them, I had to stay consistent in what I was expecting and I had to reteach and I had to give reminders. And so now this kind of comes, I guess I'm backtracking a little bit, but when students aren't necessarily doing what we are hoping they are going to do, I actually just heard a new way of thinking about this at church last week. And so I think it's going to resonate with you too. But we need to connect with our students before we correct our students. So let's think about those kids that are kind of being loud, they're being crazy, they're being chaotic, they're being distracting, whatever it is. If we just yell across the room, knock it off, or you need to stop, or whatever it is, chances are that might be almost a trigger to them. That might make them want to continue doing that behavior or actually even act out a little bit more. However, if we can connect with them first, that's going to make a huge difference too. So for me, I used hand signals with my fourth graders, my sixth graders. It even worked with my high schoolers too. But the reason I use these hand signals so much is because my students could signal to me when they needed to get a drink, when they needed to use the restroom, whatever it was. But at the same time, if a student was misbehaving, if the student was acting up, I could also give them a hand signal. So, I could just hold up my hand, give them that signal. And if that didn't work, I would try to just kind of circulate the room, stop and pause, tap their desk or gently tap them on the shoulder, whatever it was. And I could still continue to keep talking. And so right away in that exact moment, I wasn't necessarily connecting with them in a sense of having a conversation, but it was giving me an opportunity to finish what I was sharing with the whole class. That way, when there was an appropriate time, I could go over and connect with that student. And it's not going to work every single time, but it's going to work most of the time. If you can just get down to their level, have a quick conversation, say, hey, I noticed you're a little bit more wiggly today. What's going on? Hey, I noticed you have so much to share. That's so awesome. Can you tell me what you're thinking about? Whatever it was, it's going to catch them off guard, honestly, because chances are they're pretty used to getting in trouble. But if we can take a little bit of time to connect with them before we correct them, that's really going to help the climate and culture of our classroom as well. So now going back to the consistency, be consistent in your expectations that you're setting for those students. Students will rise to the level of expectation that you set for them, especially if you have set the foundation of those relationships within your classroom. If you know you want your students to enter the room a certain way, if you know you want your students to turn something in a certain way, continue working on that expectation and continue to be consistent. However, I also want you to be reflective in your teaching practice, and I want you to think, why is it maybe not going as well? Am I not explicitly teaching it enough? Am I not setting them up for success? Is there something I possibly didn't do that's causing them to not do it in the way that I'm hoping that they would do it? Really think about those things. And you know what? If you maybe didn't teach it as explicitly, if you maybe didn't go as into depth as you should have, given them enough guidance as you needed to, just openly admit that. Just say, you know what? I maybe didn't tell you everything you needed to know, and that's why things got a little crazy. So let's just try again. Take some time, reteach that expectation, get down to their level, continue to give them reminders, and hold your students accountable. Because if you continue to give in, if you start letting one thing slide and then the next thing slide, it's just going to be one thing after the next. So let's just go back to the beginning. Let's think about how you're feeling right now, how you're feeling in this moment, how you're feeling about the start of the school year. How do you feel about those relationships? How do you feel about the expectations that you're setting for your students? Do you feel like you've set the groundwork for the community in your classroom? Do you feel like you've been consistent in the expectations that you're setting? And if not, what can we do to maybe just start again? Because you do get second chances. It's okay to have second chances. And then with that, there's just one more thing that I do want to talk about with you today. You maybe saw this reel on my Instagram a few weeks ago, but I did some teacher reel talk the other day. I guess that's kind of a pun. It was teacher reel talk, REAL, and it was a reel on Instagram, REEL. But I did a real teacher reel talk the other day on Instagram. And I was sharing about how teachers have so many different jobs and roles and responsibilities, and they all just kind of start to stack up one on top of the other. So we have our main role as a teacher, and that's to educate students. We also have the role of keeping our students safe. We have the role as the nurse, as the counselor, as the gym teacher, as the recess supervisor, as the lunch person. We have the role of helping students get home safely. We have all of these different roles that we need to do to keep our students safe and to educate our students. But then on top of that, especially when we work in small schools, there are always committees, there are always different teams, there are always different classes that need to be advised. There are so many different things that are going on. And we as teachers, we want to give so much of ourselves, and that's what makes us amazing educators. But we cannot do it all. When we start adding more and more and more things onto our plate, that means something else has to give. That means we are losing a little bit of something that's important to us in order to take on that new role or that new responsibility. So in that reel, I talked a lot about how you are a person first and a teacher second. So I know for some of you, it hasn't been very long, but I want you to think about the person you were before you became a teacher. What are the things that were important to you? What are the things that were special to you? What are the things that you enjoyed doing? The hobbies that you had, the things that you did with your friends? Think of all of those things. And now I want you to ask yourself, have you had the opportunity to do those as much as you would like to lately? Because I do not want you to lose yourself in this upcoming year of teaching. I don't want you to be so busy serving every other person that you don't have time to give a little bit to yourself as well. As teachers, it's so easy to want to give and give and give and give. But as selfish as it sounds, we need to take a little bit of time too. If we do not schedule ourselves on our to-do list, we won't have time for ourselves. If we don't have things going on, people will perceive that open time on our calendar as time that they can fill, as time that they can ask for help. And yes, we want to help them. And yes, we want to be a good friend. And yes, we want to do as many things as we can possibly do. But think of all of the different responsibilities that you have. And now start thinking about which ones actually don't matter that much. Which ones can you take off your plate so that you can continue being the person that makes you the unique and special person that you are? When we think about what's most important as an educator, we need to keep our kids safe. We need them to be welcome, seen, heard, and loved. And we need to provide them with a fair education. Now think about all of the other things that are maybe stacking on your plate. And I want you to think about, are there any of those things that you could possibly pass off? Is there anything you haven't committed to yet that is not going to bring you joy? Maybe you really want to start chess club, and that's great, and you should start chess club. But just because you start one club doesn't mean you need to be the advisor for 3 clubs. Maybe you absolutely love prom and everything to do with prom, and so you want to help be on the prom committee for those juniors in high school or those sophomores or whoever it is. If that's going to bring you joy and that's going to help you let your creative self out, I want you to do that. I want you to take on those responsibilities that you're passionate about. Maybe it's coaching, whatever it is. But I don't want you to feel like you have to do it all. I don't want you to feel like you have to help with after school supervision. You have to be a class advisor. You have to be running a program. You have to be doing all of these things, because at the end of the day, your contracted job is just to be that classroom teacher. You have lesson planning. You have positive phone calls home you need to be making. You have curriculum to map out. You have so many different things that you need to do as a teacher. So please do not take on more than you can handle. You do not have to do it all. And when things start stacking up, when people start asking you to do things that you maybe don't have time for, I want you to protect yourself, protect your time, and just be super respectful and say, hey, you know what? I am so honored that you would think of me for that position. It really means a lot to me that you would ask me to take on that role, but at this time, I have to politely decline. It's just not going to work for me. And you can leave it at that. You don't have to give them a million excuses. You don't have to tell them your life story if you don't want to. You can respectfully decline so that you can focus on being a good educator, but also so that you can focus on being a human. You do not have to spend all of your nights and all of your weekends dedicating it to the school. And I know sometimes we feel like we have to because we want to be involved. We want to go to all of the sporting events. We want to attend all of the different things that our students are in. But you are a human too. So if that means having to say no so that you can go home and walk your dog, if that means having to say no so that you can attend a Bible study, so that you can go to the gym, you can attend your favorite yoga class, I want you to make those things a priority too, because the person that you are matters. And I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but this is something that I have told my students again and again and again. And I also tell myself this too, but the person you practice is the person you become. If you practice consistently giving too much of yourself, of taking on too many things than you can handle, you're going to become someone who's overwhelmed, who's stressed, who just doesn't have enough time to give to themselves, and thus everything else is lacking. You're just giving just a little bit of yourself in all of these places instead of giving all of yourself in the places that matter most. So I really want you to think about, what is it that makes you the special and unique person that you are? What are the hobbies that you enjoy? And I want you to think about those things. And now I want you to think about, how are you going to carve time? How are you going to carve time into your daily schedule so that you can continue those hobbies? You can continue seeing your friends and continue seeing your family and just making time for you. Because when you feel good, your students also feel that. Your students know when you're stressed. Your students know when you're overwhelmed. Your students know when you come into school exhausted. As much as we try to leave what's happening at home, as much as we try to leave our stress at the door, some of that just naturally comes in with us. So I want you to remember that your students can feel that stress. Your students can see that stress, and that's going to take a toll on your day as well. So as we end this today, wherever you are in your teaching journey, however things are going right now, I want you to know it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to start being consistent, and it's never too late to start putting yourself first. The person you are matters so much. We care so much about you and we want the best for you. And we know that you can't be a good educator when you're stressed. So take time to build those relationships in your classroom. Take time to really begin with the end in mind. At the end of the day, what do you want your students to get out of your class period? And start thinking of that as you're planning in those relationship building activities, as you're working through how you're going to set those routines and expectations. And honestly, just as you're thinking about how you are going to start putting yourself first so that you do not lose yourself in this upcoming school year. So I know this episode was a little bit longer than typical. There's still so much more I wish I could share with you. I do just want to remind you that I'm so excited for September 15th. I cannot wait for our kickoff party with all of our new members and all of our current members. It is going to be the best time ever. Our new coaching program is so, so, so good. I can't wait for you to be a part of it. And with that, I will see you next week. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. If you need anything at all, reach out to me, send me a DM. We can chat. We can figure this out together. I am here to support you however I can.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the North Dakota Teaching Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. Be sure to tune in to the next episode for more teaching tips to make an impact. Until next time.